All right, good evening. The Rancho Public Schools Board of Education meeting for Monday, November 18th is now called to order. If all would please arise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. JC, can you take a roll call for us?
President Galbraith,
Present.
Vice President Morgan, Secretary Tyler,
Present.
Board Member Tripp,
Present.
Board Member Miller.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, we'd like to welcome everyone out to our board meeting tonight. I know we have a couple great student commendations tonight, and so we welcome our students who are here as well as their teachers. Tonight, we'll start off our meeting with some introductory comments by Dr. Visu Cleveland.
Thank you all and welcome. We are glad that you're here this evening. Prior to this meeting, the board held a work session to look at proposed changes in graduation requirements that are the result of legislation passed last legislative session. The bill was House Bill 171. And so there's some changes that all districts are going to need to make based on that legislation. One of the major pushes in terms of the legislation is to have students take 2 classes in a career pathway. It could be 2 classes in a foreign language. It could be 2 classes in a career technical program, but to kind of start their way towards some sort of a career choice. The second was something we've had a lot of conversation in our state over many years, and that was whether Algebra 2 should be required of all students or whether it should be optional. And the bill made it optional, and each school district can look at that and make their own decision. But the board did look at that issue and discuss that this evening. We'll be bringing that back in a regular public meeting at probably the next board meeting or the meeting after that. School boards are given some flexibility, and so you have those things like the 4 years of English language arts and the 4 years of social studies and so forth. And traditionally the board has had some flexibility in some units that they can offer. They talked a lot about what those might look like. Generally, the overall tenor of the discussion was they wanted to leave as many options available for students so they can make their own choices. Okay. We have some commendations for fine arts. There are 2 commendations this evening, and Dr. Kurt Schmidt, who is our Executive Director of Fine Arts, will present those. The first is the Rio Rancho High School Marching Band. They are the winners of the New Mexico State band competition. And as you know, band competitions in New Mexico are very, very competitive. And so we congratulate the Rams. This is a new competition. In the past, we've had ZIA, we've had pageant of bands, and this year they moved toward a state band competition under the NMAA. And so they will take the first of that new recognition, and we do congratulate them. We also have a student from Cleveland. Her name is Kiana Aragon, and she took first place in the high school division for the State Fair Fine Arts Show in September. And you'll be hearing a little bit about her recognition as well. So again, congratulations, first state champions for this new NMAA state championship for marching band. And Kiana, this is a picture of her with her wonderful win at the state fair. We have some other business items. We have an invitation to bid an ITB 2025-07 for facilities, and it's for landscaping maintenance services. And this will be presented by Michael Madrid, who is our Director of Purchasing and is our Chief Procurement Officer for the district. The board is going to be asked to consider approval of a multiple of 4 responsive bidders. I can tell you we have a lot of grounds work. We're a very large district, a lot of fields, we have a lot of walkways, we have a lot of areas to cover, and we really appreciate the extra help and support our community contractors who step up to bid so that we can provide safe outdoor spaces that are clean and certainly visually appealing. It doesn't matter what it looks like when you go to school. We have a really important issue to talk about this evening. The Rio Rancho Board will be asked to consider legislative priorities for the upcoming session, and it's 2 months away. It's just right around the corner, comes very quickly. This discussion will be led by Lauren Hatch, who is our Chief Legal Counsel, and Chris Bolzano is here this evening with government relations, and he has worked with us for many years, and we're very pleased to have him with us this evening. I do want to just let you know something that's really important, and we'll be talking about it over the next several months. This year, the Rio Rancho School District, along with some other districts, we were not alone, experienced a major funding shortfall, which was really ironic at a time when the state as well, really has plenty of resources. And as they redid the formula, they changed some of the variables. And make long story short, we came out pretty short at the end of the process. And so we're going to continue to have some conversations with legislative leadership and others to see what we need to do to get that funding restored. Really short Reader's Digest version is at the state's request. We expanded the school year, extended it. We added after-school programs. We did a lot of the things the state asked us to do. And then that funding was in there below the line in the formula, and then it just disappeared. And so the total loss for the district was significant, and we've got to get that issue resolved because it is critical to maintaining our academic and our co-curricular programs. And so we will continue to work to see if we can't get a resolution. Hobbs is in that same category. Las Cruces is having very similar issues. Santa Fe was short. So we're trying to figure out exactly how that came about and then see what we can do to remediate it. If we don't get it remediated, we're going to see major cuts. And so we really hope that we can find a resolution to that. And then, of course, the board has also sent to the New Mexico School Boards Association a list of our priorities for inclusion in the legislative platform, and several of them were adopted and were included in that document as well. And then another really important item is our capital outlay projects, and you will be asked to consider approving the capital outlay projects for this next year. It goes without saying the needs are far greater than the funds that are available, but we have some really good projects we think will make a really big difference in the district. And it's like so many other things, it's always hard to prioritize because there are so many needs and so many things that we could do. But I think we've got some really good proposals, and we think those are very defensible in terms of working with our legislative delegation. The report is going to be presented by Patrick Martinez, who is, of course, our Executive Director of Facilities. And it will be a breakdown of projects, first by departments. There's some projects in there for athletics, for facilities, for food and nutrition, for IT and safety and security. And as part of that, there'll be project descriptions for the board, and estimated costs will also be included. And then we have policy 209, and that is on the agenda in order of business. It is a first reading, and the presentation will be made by Lauren Hatch, our Chief Legal Counsel, and this, of course, has been reviewed by the legal department. All of the changes that are being proposed do adhere to state laws and regulations. There's a first reading. No action can be taken by the board at this meeting. So any proposed changes and any other things you might propose or suggest will be considered at the next regular board meeting, but they'll be introduced tonight. Do you have any questions, concerns, comments? Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Cleveland. Appreciate it. All right, we'll now go to approve the prioritized agenda and proposed time allocations.
This is Board Member Tyler. I'll make a motion to approve the prioritized agenda and proposed time allocation.
Board Member Jeff Morgan, a second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 5-0. All right, we'll now go to our commendations for the evening. Our first commendation will be for the Rio Rancho High School Marching Band for winning the state band competition. And so we'd like to invite them up along with Dr. Kurt Schmidt, our Executive Director of Fine Arts. And I have to say, I'm super excited. This was I could hear it all happening from my house, by the way. So, and I'm kind of far away.
President Galbraith, members of the board, Dr. Cleveland. Tonight we have two commendations for achievements in fine arts. The first is for the Rio Rancho High School Marching Band. On Saturday, October 26th, the New Mexico Activities Association ran the first ever state marching band competition here in Rio Rancho at RRPS. The Rio Rancho High School Marching Band won first place in 5A and also garnered awards for best percussion, best color guard, high visual performance, and high general effect. And it takes, I know firsthand it takes a village to run a marching band in a program like this, whether it's staff, teachers, of course the students, parents, volunteers, chaperones, and so forth. So part of that village is here today, and I want to introduce the director of bands at Rio Rancho High School, Mr. Matt Casares, and he is going to introduce some members of the team here. We have some students here also, and he'll say a few words also. So, Mr. Casares.
Thank you, Dr. Schmidt. Board, thank you for having us here this evening. This is a very small portion of our village for marching band. Our staff, as well as our students. To my left, we have Ms. Selena Green, who's our Director of Color Guard, and we have Mr. Juan Torres, who is our District Percussion Coordinator. We also have Mr. William Kramer, who is on our percussion staff. There are others who could not be here as well. And we have 3 of our 4 drum majors here this evening. We have Aurora Espinosa, Isaac Otteson, and Sarah Allman. And I'd just like to say, again, as I always say when I'm up here, thank you so much for your support of the fine arts and specifically the band programs here in Rio Rancho. We cannot do what we do without that support. But thank you to the staff who are always hardworking, but mostly I want to say thank you publicly to these students. They take what we say without any thought and they say, yeah, they must know what they're talking about, and they do it for some strange reason. We start our summer band program mid-July. I think it was July 15th this year. And really our season just ended at that state competition. So for them to give up, that after school time and weekends and all that is just a testament to their tenacity and their willingness to go the extra mile to succeed. And something we talked about this year is if you put in the hard work, you will get the results. Right. And we say that every year. And this year, it actually came to fruition with some trophies, which was very nice. So these drum majors, we put a lot on their shoulders. They're in charge of the entire band. And as a director, when that competition time starts and the judges say go, we kind of point at the drum majors and the next 8 minutes is up to them and the band. There's no timeouts. We can't stop it. It is what it is, and they do a fantastic job. So again, we just want to say thank you for your support, and thank you to the staff and students of the Rio Rancho High School Marching Band.
Do you have more on them, or can I?
I was just going to say, you sometimes want to hear from students. I don't know if
do.
you want to put them on the spot or not.
Yeah, well, I will ask them. I don't know if any of you are willing to, okay? It's one of you I know, but I'm not going to put any pressure. But if anyone is willing to just take us to that moment and what it was like, because I've been asking around before all this happened, and I'm like, who's going to win it? And I teach kids from Volcano, and I talked to some Cleveland kids and some Rio kids, and everyone's like, Clovis always wins. It's going to be Clovis. So as you guys, I don't know if any one of you or all of you are welcome to, but does anyone want to take us just to that moment and what it was like? Because I know it was pretty exciting is what I do know. And anything else you want to tell us too, you're welcome to.
Well, hi, I'm the head drum major of the Rio Marching Band. It's my third and final year being a drum major. And this year started off really strong. I mean, in the past, we've always been like, oh, this will be better than the next year. But this year, it really was because I was a freshman the first year after COVID. And so I've been able to see that growth with Mr. C and everybody else. And I mean, when they announced us having won Best Color Guard first, I think everybody was shocked because Zia Cleveland had won Best Color Guard, not even Clovis. And so we were like, that's weird. And then we won Best Percussion and Best General Effect. And we were just looking at each other. And I remember like making eye contact with them. And we're like, guys, did we like win? And it was crazy having beat them, and we couldn't stop smiling. I mean, my tears were definitely tears of joy. I don't know about theirs, but we were all crying, and it was amazing. And for me, it's the best way to end high school, like senior year, you know? You guys have anything else?
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
So I'm Isaac. I'm next in line once Aurora graduates. And like at that ceremony, it was like all the work of the season, you know, it all just like came together at that point, and we were standing there and we saw the results of all the hard work and the dedication of not just us, but the band. And yeah, it's just like accumulation, and it all came full circle, you know, and that's all I gotta say.
It's hard work. You did good. I wasn't going to pressure you. I wasn't.
Well, just like something I noticed when we won, Cleveland was very supportive, and I know like the football teams, Rio and Cleveland, very like head on. But I just love how the band like community as a whole is just so kind, and everyone's always cheering for each other. And I loved being able to like talk to all of the different bands afterwards, and I think everyone was just excited about the scores. And I don't know, I think we've made a lot of progress this year, and I'm excited for next year.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for sharing that. I love that. And that is what I heard from my students from over in APS is they were like, I was like, so Rio Rancho won. And they said, yeah, because they were so good. And they were enjoying talking about it. And so thank you for all that you do. Thank you to our instructors and for all the time and effort. And it's nice to see sometimes where all those things come together. You guys have just done, and I just always hear such wonderful things about you and the things that you're doing. And students, thank you for it's you, right? The coming up, those who are coming up, they're watching you and they want to be in that place. And so the way that you act is so important because it really builds our programs. And so thank you for being that, that example to the rest of our student body that they can look to and something they can aspire to. Dr. Cleveland, did you want to add anything?
I would just ask, it is a rather big production, and how many students are there in the band that you were directing and coordinating?
I believe the final number is 168.
That's incredible. That's wonderful. And to manage that many people on the field and everybody does the right thing, I'm really impressed by that.
So thank you.
Congratulations to you.
All right. Thank you so much for being here tonight. We appreciate you guys.
Thank you for coming.
And I'll announce because we're waiting for her to come up. So our next commendation is for our high school division of State Fair Art Show winner, Kiana Aragon.
Yes, our second commendation of the evening is for Ms. Kiana Aragon, who won first place in this year's State Fair Art Show Upper Grades Division. And her artwork is projected again up there, which is a wonderful portrait.
Amazing work.
So Ms. Aragon is a junior at Cleveland High School. Her art teacher, Ms. Liz Olive, who's here tonight, says of Kiana, quote, "She is currently enrolled in AP Drawing and Painting. She is a wildly talented artist who is curious and devoted to her craft in a variety of media. She definitely puts the work in artwork," she says. So first I'll let Ms. Olive say a few words first, and turn it over to Kiana. But congratulations on a wonderful job.
I didn't realize I was going to say something. Thank you for that.
That's how we roll.
I do also want to say thank you for your support of fine arts. We couldn't do it without the support we get. So thank you very much. The state fair thing was great. We didn't even realize it was going to be adjudicated. We thought it was just to show off artwork. And then all of a sudden we get a blue ribbon. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, and I also want to point out that we're visual artists, not performers, so we're a little bit more shy. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. You're good. All right. Well, thank you guys for coming in. We're so grateful. I was looking at this picture today and I just thought it was absolutely beautiful. I didn't get to the state fair this year, so I'm glad that I could see this because you have wonderful talents. So thank you for coming in, Dr. Cleveland. And if anyone,
Congratulations. It's a wonderful thing competing against students from all over the state and come at the very top. And it is an impressive piece of art.
Yeah. So thank you. Thank you for coming into the board tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. We'll now go into, I always just love having students in here. It's hard to continue on. So we'll go into our public comment part of our meeting tonight. Get all my notes gathered. So we have both in-person public comment tonight, and we also have public comment that came in through our form. So I'm going to go through those ones first, and I just summarize the ones that come in through the online form. And I just want to put that reminder for those who might be listening online that if they would like to have their voice heard, to please come in, because otherwise I just summarize and read some names. So if anyone wants to have their voice heard, please come in and give public comment in the boardroom. So the ones that we received 27 online public comments, and 3 of those, I'll do our 3 of those were in regards to Puesta. 2 of them came from Sylvia Oliva in regards to just concerns about Puesta being repurposed, the possibilities of that with our pre-K. And the other with that was Eileen Retriera. I wish I was better at Retriera. The rest of those, we have 24 that were on our safe space signs. I'm asking the board to take a look at the policy in regards to that. So here's who sent in on safe space. So it was Abigail Williams, Corey Messenger, Benjamin Cross, Lorraine Lesko, Amanda Kraft, Melissa Dickinson, Kathy Watts, Kyle Watts, Brenda Bailey White, Vanessa Waltz, Jen Doolittle, Martha Ignal, Amy Ivras, Victoria Mungel, Rebecca Dreskin Evans, Maggie Price, Emily Holzenknecht, Marilyn Stoops, Brian Rasmussen, Patty Emord, Juliana Todescan, Ashley Rhodes, Sharon Frey Pruitt, and Joy Van Leaf. And so those were all in regards to our safe space signs and the policy that goes along with that. In the boardroom tonight, we have 5 public comments that will be here in our boardroom tonight. And I think many of these have given public comment before, but we'll just go through some of the things with it. So you get 3 minutes to give your public comment. JC will start a timer as soon as you start talking. Your time will start. And then if the timer goes off while you're still speaking, we just ask that you please sit down so that we can have it fair to all of those who are giving public comment. And also the board cannot respond back to you unless it's on our agenda. So we're grateful for you to be here, but we won't be able to respond back to the public comment tonight. And so we'll go ahead and get started. You ready to go, JC, on your end? Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. Our first is Denise Weaver.
Dr. Cleveland, President Galbraith, and members of the board. My name is Denise Weaver, and I am a resident of Rio Rancho and a mother of 2 children. And professionally, I'm a board certified behavior analyst and have worked in the mental health field for over 20 years. Gender dysphoria is a legitimate mental health condition that needs to be treated with evidence-based treatment, not encouraged and affirmed. The compassionate and responsible response is to recognize the individual's distress while staying grounded in reality. To affirm a mental illness, which is what we are doing with things like safe spaces, is harmful. Dr. Paul McHugh, psychiatrist and director of the Department of Behavioral Sciences at Johns Hopkins Hospital, likens it to treating someone with anorexia. You would not affirm their delusion, nor would you affirm the delusion of someone with gender dysphoria, is what he said. Male and female are not arbitrary identities based on feelings. They are scientific realities based on DNA, which cannot be changed. The transgender movement, which seeks to affirm mental illness, is attempting to derail our Judeo-Christian culture, which believes in male and female, through social engineering. And these safe spaces and signs will do just that by targeting the hearts and minds of children. There are 3 phases of moving toward collectivism. Phase 1 is propaganda, telling people what to think and believe. By allowing LGBTQ signs and safe spaces, you are promoting this ideology and ultimately agreeing with the transgender movement to force their views on every child, youth, teacher, or worker that comes into the public school system. And safe spaces ultimately are saying to these people that you must agree, that you must support and celebrate and even conform to their beliefs. Indoctrination of young children to accept and embrace normalcy of transgenderism is contributing to the destruction of families and disregarding the scientific and biblical identity that many of the families in this school district believe in. Every study shows the vast majority of those with gender dysphoria will desist. They will stop wishing that they were the opposite sex. There is no research to show that social affirmation with things like safe spaces decreases suicide or leads to positive outcomes. In fact, affirmation actually leads to those with gender dysphoria continuing into harmful, irreversible medical interventions. When teachers and others in authority are being affirmed with things like safe spaces, pronouns, being allowed to use different bathrooms, this persists the child to continue in the disassociation of their body and their mind. It moves children into further dangerous denial. When children are led to believe that questioning your biology is normal, which it is not, when they are being led to believe that you were born into the wrong body, which is not possible, all of this presented to them without the possibility of challenging that idea, it's indoctrination. So I'm here to encourage your current policy and ask that you not change it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next is Tanya Watkins.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Tanya Watkins. I am a resident of Rio Rancho, as well as I am a wife and a mother and an educator by profession. When I heard earlier today that there was going to be discussion, a vote on something as the safe spaces that has already been voted on by the board, I jumped into action because I support the previous removal of this signage that is political in nature. Because as a mother, as an educator, I think that all children need to feel safe when they go to school. It boggles my mind as to why we need to have signage that would make some feel safe and others who may actually disagree with that ideology feel unsafe. So it purports to me the idea that they would be persecuted for that belief by any teacher who might be presenting that that stance to them. And that to me is very disturbing. So I support wholeheartedly the previous vote, and I pray that you all continue to maintain the stance to not allow the politics to affect our children as much as no doubt they see at home. I know that I teach mine according to our beliefs, our core beliefs and values, morals. But when they go to school, they need to be learning about math and science and reading, writing, not this ideology of any kind of trans or gender ideology that seems to be getting into the way of raising our children to learn how to think for themselves. So I just here to continue to support you, to show that side of the conservative viewpoint, if you will, and hope that this question does not, in fact, come up in the future. Thank you.
Next is Erica McDowell.
Good evening. My name is Erica McDowell, and I'm the Managing Director of GLSEN New Mexico. We're an organization that works across the state to make our schools safer and more inclusive for LGBTQ+ students and educators. And today I'm speaking to urge the leadership of Rio Rancho Public Schools to reverse the decision about safe space signs, and I want to explain why. You have likely heard this before, but I believe it bears repeating. LGBTQ+ youth have significantly worse mental health outcomes than their straight cisgender peers. In 2023, research by the Trevor Project found that 41%, almost half, of LGBTQ+ young people seriously considered attempting suicide in the past year. Young people are not inherently prone to suicide risk because of their sexual orientation or gender identity, but rather are placed at higher risk because of how they are mistreated and stigmatized in our society. Our schools are supposed to be places where young people feel safe and can focus on learning. I agree with that point that one of the previous speakers made. But unfortunately, our schools here in New Mexico are a place where LGBTQ+ youth experience mistreatment and stigmatization. GLSEN's 2021 National School Climate Survey found that the vast majority of LGBTQ+ students here in New Mexico had heard anti-LGBTQ remarks regularly at school. And many of these remarks came from staff. Our research about our young people here in New Mexico shows that 59% of our students are regularly hearing school staff make homophobic remarks, and 80% are regularly hearing school staff make negative remarks about someone's gender expression. These adults are the ones who are supposed to make sure our students feel safe and can learn, and instead, many of them, and I'm not saying all of them, but many of them are knowingly or unknowingly stigmatizing a huge number of students. It's heavy stuff. It's hard for me to face this reality as a former educator. Thankfully, we know that small numbers of supportive adults can make a huge impact on mental health outcomes for LGBTQ+ youth. The Trevor Project's research has shown that LGBTQ+ youth who report having at least just one accepting adult were 40% less likely to attempt suicide. It's a staggering effect. Our research, the same research that showed that so many staff are making anti-LGBTQ+ remarks, thankfully showed that 95%, almost all of our students in New Mexico, could identify at least one supportive adult in their schools. And that's huge. That is a strength that we have. But those students need to know who those adults are, and that's what safe space efforts do. They help students find the safe people who can help reduce these horrifying, staggering disparities in mental health for our LGBTQ+ students. On behalf of the GLSEN New Mexico chapter, I'm encouraging the board and the administrative leadership of this school district to take seriously your obligation to support the well-being of each and every student. You have LGBTQ+ students in your district. Statistically, almost a third of young people in New Mexico are identifying as LGBTQ+ because the environment is gradually getting safer for young people to be out. This is a suicide prevention strategy. I urge you to change the policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next is Roy Weaver.
Good evening, Board. My name is Roy Weaver, and I'm a pastor at Calvary Rio Rancho, and I'm here to discuss a concern regarding the so-called safe spaces for LGBTQ plus students within our schools, and to share my perspective on how approaches might impact our children and the broader school community as a whole. The intent of these spaces is to provide a supportive environment for students who may feel marginalized or vulnerable. However, my concern lies in the way these spaces encourage the segregation of students based on identity rather than inclusion for all. Creating separate spaces for specific groups reinforces the idea of division. We already face numerous factors that set people apart, whether it's skin color, religion, financial status, or gender. If we create spaces for some students based on how they identify or how they feel at any given moment, we risk deepening these divides and creating further separation instead of uniting our students. Every student in Rio Rancho Public Schools should expect to be in a safe space. One of the primary expectations that parents have when they send their kids to school is that their child will be cared for in a secure, respectful environment where they can focus on learning and growing. Rather than creating spaces based on identity, we should be working to make sure that every school is a safe space for all students. This means setting clear standards of behavior where any aggression is dealt with swiftly and firmly to ensure all students are respected and protected. Our goal as an education system should be to provide academic learning, as well as raising children who know how to interact with people who are different than themselves. We want our students to grow into outstanding citizens who can work together to solve problems, show empathy, and demonstrate love and respect for all people. The school environment should be a place where students learn these life skills in a shared, integrated space. As a school system, we have a responsibility to create an environment where all students feel safe and valued. But this sense of security should not be achieved through division. It should come from fostering a culture of mutual respect where every student, no matter their background or beliefs, feels that they are part of the whole and that their presence matters. I respectfully ask the school board to not segregate any group of students and instead focus on reinforcing a truly inclusive environment without the need for separation. Let's work to prepare our children for a culture, for a future where they can thrive in a diverse, interconnected world. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last for the evening is Richard Strife.
Hello, board. This is my first time ever doing anything like this, but I heard this was happening, and based on my profession, where I've been a clinical mental health specialist and work with human relations and dynamics and systems and how those little pieces all impact all the other pieces and parts in it, I wanted to come in and give my part on that. Furthermore, I work with neurodivergent people primarily, and neurodivergent people commonly have this overlap with the whole queer spectrum all over the place, from asexual to queer to gay, lesbian, transgender. That does happen. But the way that that interacts or comes out with these neurodivergent people is because their brains work differently. And because their brains work differently already, they are struggling in education systems to begin with. If they think that they are not welcome there, that they do not belong because they're so different, they alienate themselves in their own heads. And then that separation makes it to where they cannot receive the learning that they're being offered. And for me, right there, what my main concern is if you take away the safe space where those people can recognize the symbol, the colors, this is a place where I can go and find the safe base, which was brought up in a previous mention. If they can't go and find that safe base, they're not going to be able to regulate. And if they can't regulate, they can't learn. That's going to turn into destructive habits, not only to themselves, but to the community, which will impact me as a resident that pays taxes and lives here. I don't want those destructive habits to come out in that way. And so this has very little to do with ideology as far as I'm concerned. I don't understand how the symbol is an ideology whenever it's just a colorful thing that will attract attention to somebody to go, oh, hey, I can go here and talk to somebody about what's going on in my mind and they'll understand. They're not going to ridicule me. They're not going to make me feel different, like they don't understand what's happening in my head. And so I really am only speaking on behalf, I think, of the neurodivergent people, the neurodivergent children, but I do worry about them if you allow this to happen and remove the signs. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, that is our public comment for the evening. Just a point of clarification on our agenda tonight. The only policy that we'll be talking about tonight is just moving where our public comment will sit in our agenda. And so I just wanted to make that clarification for this evening. We'll now go to the consent agenda.
Board Member Tyler, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Board Member Jeff Morgan, I second.
Okay, we have a motion by Jessica Tyler and a second by Jeff Morgan, and all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 5-0. Okay, we'll move into the business portion of our meeting for the evening. We're going to consider the approval of our legislative priorities. So presenting will be Lauren Hatch, our Chief Legal Counsel, along with Chris Balzano, who does our government relations. And so we're happy to see you. I haven't seen you in a while, Chris, so it's nice to see you.
Well, good evening, Madam President, members of the board, and Dr. Cleveland. I am Lauren Hatch, the district's chief counsel, and I have with me the distinguished Chris Balzano. It is that time of year again where we are preparing to make our case to the legislature on issues that are important to the district. My first slide here shows there we go, the dates that are important. This is a 60-day session, so it can be any issue considered by the legislature as well as the budget. The most important date that's coming up very soon is December 13th, and that's when we have to have our capital outlay request submitted. That'll be something that the board is considering tonight. And then these are the other deadlines involving bill preparation, hearing the bills in the legislature, and when they become effective. If you could give me the next slide. These are the resolutions that the board discussed and approved on these different issues. These are all issues that we will pursue in the legislative session. And but we wanted to talk with you about some other issues as well. If you can give me the next slide. These are some priorities that the administration has identified for you to consider. During Dr. Cleveland's opening comments, she mentioned the reduction in funding that the school district suffered during fiscal year 2025. Overall, that's the red line banner. We need to get that resolved, and we will work to do that. But there's some other issues as well. In 2023, during the regular session, the legislature made a change to capital outlay, the capital outlay process, and how much state district match has to be paid in order to do a project. They reduced the match that was required, but that only lasted until fiscal year 2027. We would like to see that extended further into the future. This was a priority we looked at last year. We would like to consider it again this year, moving that sunset date to fiscal year 30 instead of 27. Another really important issue, as the legislature has been considering making changes to the funding formula, they have some things that they plan on tweaking in the formula, but there are some priorities that the district has been pursuing for a few years. There is no factor in the funding formula to pay for CTE, for security, or for counselors, which are three areas that the district has a very high priority on. Those things cost a lot of money. We believe, the staff believes that it ought to be included in the funding considerations. So we'd like to pursue that as well. Another item is a few years ago, the legislature really ratcheted down and clarified who had to have a background check, an FBI background check, in order to be around students. in order to ensure that the people who are working with our students are appropriately credentialed to do that. This has brought a couple of difficulties for us, and one of them is when we are trying to figure out internships for students in the CTE program. It's not clear if they go and work for a facility that's outside of Rio Rancho Public Schools, who has to be background checked. And we'd like to work with the legislature to see if we can get that clarified. An example would be, let's say they get an intern placed at a auto dealership where they're working on cars. Does everybody at that dealership have to be background checked? And it's not clear from the statute at this point. And then finally, some considerations with the K-12 Plus program. When they passed K-12 Plus, originally they were going to let both the elementary and the secondary schools count 60 hours of professional development as instructional time. At the last minute, the legislature made a change. They allow, at the elementary level, you can do 60 hours, but at the secondary level, it's only 30. That creates a mismatch on what we can do with our teachers, and we'd like to see that to be consistent, is the proposal. And then as part of the funding decrease that we received in fiscal year 25, they eliminated a below-the-line funding called out-of-school time. And that allowed the district to fund after-school programs for students. They were very popular. We would propose that we get funding back for that. Those are the things that the staff and administration would like to see. Would love to hear if you have any other ideas that we should add to that for consideration in this session. Any thoughts?
Questions and such. Jeff, you have a question, comment? You looked like you were ready.
Well, yeah, I'm always
You're
ready.
always ready.
Yeah, always. But I reviewed the information. I was a little unclear on the FY 30. So I really appreciate you explaining that, because I was like, okay, really? I didn't know what that was. So thank you for clearing that up, but I don't have any questions. And thanks for your time and thanks for the information as well.
Okay. Gary, do you have any?
Just a question about what are we thinking about when we talk about clarifying background requirements?
So a couple of years ago, the legislature created some very specific statutes about who needs to be background checked if they're going to have unsupervised access to students. And it says that every employee, every volunteer, every contractor's employee who may have unsupervised access to a student on a campus, that they have to be background checked. That's great. The challenge is what happens if they're not on our campus, but they would be considered a contractor? What is the requirement for background checks there? Can you do one background check and have them supervise the students? Do you have to have everybody background checked? It's not clear.
So like if they're in a car dealership, like you were saying,
Like a
right?
car
They're in a
dealership.
car dealership and they're doing an internship there. Do we have to get background checks for every single
every
person
employee
who's
there.
working there?
Yeah.
Which would be very difficult to do.
Or can we do one employee that's their primary supervisor or something like that?
Okay.
I guess,
Does that answer your question?
yeah, I'm worried about if we just do one background check and then something happens and then we're liable.
Yeah.
We pay a major lawsuit.
There's definitely some balancing there.
Yeah, so I don't know what the answer is, but I just know that it's a nightmare for contractors redoing a track. But it may have to be a difficulty for an auto shop with 35 mechanics. I mean, we're talking about our kids. This is what I brought up when we were going to do the auto mechanics with the CTE and the contracts. When you put kids with adults,
Yeah.
You better be worried.
There has to be a balance point there.
There has to be a balance part.
It's really important for our CTE students to have work experiences, and we want to do it in a way that's safe, but also complies with the law.
Correct.
And CNM's obligation or their goal is to have every single student who's in a career path have an experience with an internship. So does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I just
Yeah, go ahead.
you may not have this information, but I wonder how many organizations out there that we work with that does not require background checks. Do we know that?
Any organization that the district works with, where we have a contract relationship and that they will be working with students without supervision, are background checked.
Okay.
It is, I want to say over 1,000. It's a lot. If they were going to be working in a school and they're a contractor or a contractor's employee, they will be background checked. A volunteer will be background checked. All employees will be background checked.
For the companies that provide service for us, correct?
Yes, if they would have unsupervised access to students, yeah. That's what the law says.
Yeah. Before I go on, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
You're good.
And that's a great policy. I mean, that's been needed in New Mexico.
Before I go to the rest of the board, did you have something you wanted to add?
You know what, here's one of the challenges, you know, that it is very difficult to balance it because a couple of years ago, we were trying to get folks in to give COVID and flu shots. And they were pharmacists and they go through a very extensive background check. All pharmacists have to do that. But they were told they would have to do another. And they said, no, thank you. We're not going to do that. And so ours is rigorous and we don't see the need for it to be double. There's also a challenge in you get it one district, you have to do it again. You know, you can't, we ran into some problems kind of ironically one time when some of our folks from the public ed department showed up and they didn't have background checks. So we pulled out the piece of paper and said, you've got to have it. But it is difficult. I know that they're already running into some problems. And again, I agree. I don't know the answer to it. But they're going and talking to people about internships. They have to pay. They have to go do all of this. And the businesses are saying, no, we're not going to do it. Thank you. So I don't know what the answer is because our young people desperately need those experiences. Yes, there is liability, and it's a very great liability if there ends up being a problem. And so, you know, using all due caution really makes an awful lot of sense. But we can't quite figure out how we're going to make this work if the people who have the businesses and so forth refuse to do it and so they will not do it. Then that means that some of our young people will not be able to work in that business. And many cases it is, you know, maybe they don't have a background check, but an awful lot of them, they already have them, but they're not ours. They don't adhere to the rules and regulations that have set down. So, you know, maybe a compromise on this would be if you have a legitimate background check, you would accept that, and you don't have to redo it every time you do something different. So I think there is some common ground. There could be a middle of the road approach rather than all or nothing.
No, I think that's good. Okay, thanks. Beth, do you have any?
No, I think you've answered my concerns. I appreciate your research and your work in putting these together, and I hope we do get some resolutions to these issues. They're very important. Thank you.
And then Jessica. I have a couple actually. So when we were doing CTE and we were really pushing CTE, I just remember, I think it was who's Las Cruces representative or senator that we used to talk to about CTE a lot. Anyway.
So
yes, yeah. So I remember him being like, okay, when it comes to CTE, like, what do you think we should do about it? And kind of like put it back on us as far as what our thoughts were and how they could get this into the formula. So I guess my question is as we put like with CTE security and counselors, because I think those are high on our list, but when that question gets asked, what are we going to say back? Do we have any thoughts and plans on what we can say to that?
I will look right at Mike Baker and say, what are the numbers? We will have ideas about what that would be.
Okay.
I think you can infer from some of the factors that are already in the formula what would be appropriate.
Okay. And then as we get those, maybe some of those things could even come out to the board, because I just remember that was a big thing. And it wasn't even just from him. I think that we had a few. I think Craig Brandt even asked us some of our thoughts on that. And so, Chris, did you want to add to it?
Yeah, we're actually, you want to talk about that?
Madam President, Superintendent, we spoke with one of our senators in our delegation, and the discussion this week at LFC, well, they were looking into a 1.25 to 1.30 increase in the unit value for CTE, but Our delegation believes that that's not enough. CTE is expensive. So the discussion is there. I believe that's going to go through the session. And as you know, going to have to be up there and remind them of, hey, you want a CTE, but there is a cost for that. And that's not how we do with such small value.
That's helpful. Yeah. We just need to have a plan. We need to have a plan.
And perhaps it ought to be limited to districts that are actually providing CTE. Not just a clearinghouse of money.
Well, and I do think that that's really important probably for all of these, especially for CTE, is that there's some proofs that you're doing things and that it's available. I mean, we know that there's a lot of money sitting there, so it's available to all, but you have to actually be doing it. So, okay. So I know you have more that's coming up right on the slides
I'm
here.
going to turn the time over to Chris.
Okay.
Next slide, please. So, like any good government relations team, feedback from the board, and I always receive feedback from the administration. If there is anything there, you're going to continue receiving the legislative reports. You should already be receiving those memorandums that we send with the reports of each committee that we have been monitoring in person there and traveling around the state. Things are getting very busy this week and the following week before Thanksgiving. And then I'll be in Santa Fe for the 2 weeks, first 2 weeks of December, monitoring the last committees with endorsement of legislation and other things that are involving before the session starts. And then January 5th, the session technically starts up for me. It's January 5th. But the dates are there. We will send another email with all the important dates for you to know as well, with information about Rancho Day and the date that you guys are going to be visiting there in the Capitol. And then if there is any feedback and anything that you think will be important for you to know, please shoot me a text message or give me a call, send an email, and I'll be more than happy to provide that. There we go. So that's just another thought or recommendation is having that one-on-one contact with the new delegation that's coming up after elections. I'm going to work with Lauren on figuring out those dates so that we can sit down with the legislatures and letting them know what our legislature priorities are, what we are working on. Again, re-emphasizing that capital outlay deadline is December 13 at 12 o'clock at noon. So make sure that we have that submitted, and I'm working with the administration as well to get a copy of that so I can continue doing my lobbying and securing those projects. And then we have programmatic funding or growth, what it's called right now, which is the useful curriculum. So there is no really a deadline on that, but that is something that I give that deadline to our clients that are applying for that. So that way, when I'm there on a roundhouse and a legislature calls me, Chris, I got some money for programmatic funding. What we do, we are ready with our projects for that. That's it.
Okay. Dr. Cleveland, do you want to, we can.
Thank you for pulling all of this together. I think one of the things I wanted to mention back on the 60 hours for professional development, our teachers won't have any professional development the second semester. No time to be together, no time to plan, no time to do all those really important things. We sent a request for a waiver to the state. It was not approved. But that time is really important. And so we really do prioritize our time with kids. That's number one. But there are times staff needs to get together and work on things, and we're not going to have it second semester. So that's really going to be hard for our teachers. And when the assessment data comes in, there's not going to be time to sit down and look at it, talk about it. So I'm really hoping that we can get that 60 hours back in. It's really important for our teachers to have the kind of time they need to plan and work together on what they teach and to assess what their students are learning. And then just one last, I mentioned it before, and I'll just say this again. If we don't get that out of school time money back, if we don't recover some of that loss from next year, not being melodramatic, I just say it's really important. Everybody knows we will be making some significant cuts. We're just going to have to. And, it's like everything else. It's okay to cut, but just don't cut me.
Right.
Or my department, or my school, that's just human nature. But everyone's going to feel this one if we're not able to get that resolved. And so we really need to work hard to try to deal with that. I want to stress it is not a Rio Rancho Public Schools issue alone at all. And we have some other districts that are having the same conversations right now with their boards. So, we may even need at some point to even talk with some of those boards about what we might do in terms of being united in trying to get some of these things resolved. And I'm very hopeful if we work, we'll be able to do that. But this is something that is going to impact our district at all grade levels, all schools, all operations, if we're not able to get it resolved.
All right, thank you. And then rest of the board, do you have any more questions or any comments on anything on this side either? Okay, I think we're good. Okay, thank you. Thanks for
I
coming
think
in.
we have to make the action here.
Oh, we do. We have to vote on it. Yes.
This is Board Member
We need to-
Tyler. I will make a motion to approve the legislative priorities outlined this evening.
Board Member Jeff Morgan, I second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. JC, you want to take a roll call vote for us?
Vice President Morgan,
Yes.
Secretary Tyler,
Yes.
Board Member Tripp,
Yes.
Board Member Miller,
Yes.
President Galbraith.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Jessica Tyler, for keeping me on task. All right, our next is to consider the approval of ITB number 2025-007 FAC Landscaping Maintenance, and Michael Madrid, our Director of Purchasing and Chief Procurement Officer, will present.
For President Galbraith, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Cleveland, the action item before you this afternoon is to award ITB 2025-007 FAC Landscaping Maintenance. The request is for a multiple award to be issued to Brightview out of Albuquerque, Diaz Landscaping Management out of Rio Rancho, Mount Sinai Landscaping out of Albuquerque, and Yellowstone Landscaping also out of Albuquerque. This contract aims to uphold the maintenance, beautification, and safety standards for school grounds in a cost-effective manner while ensuring consistent, high-quality care. Some of the services that will be performed under this agreement or this procurement are mowing, edging, trimming, weeding and mulching, tree and shrub maintenance, irrigation system maintenance, fertilization and weed control, trash and debris removal, seasonal services, placement of wood chips, and other services that may be required. As Dr. Cleveland mentioned earlier when she was going over the agenda, these vendors have been identified as responsive. They provided us the documentation as outlined in the ITB. And with that, I stand for questions.
Okay, any questions from the board? Go ahead.
Turn your mic on.
I know we had a discussion about this a couple of board meetings back, but I brought up just about the appearance around the schools, and I'm thankful that we're getting something like this. But I'm wondering, is there a budget for, we get a windstorm and an elementary principal calls and says, from the time the kids get off the car until they get into the school, we got shrub all over the place, and we have a little bit of a budget that we can help them, especially with the seasonal and I think it's only going to be $45 an hour if I'm reading this right. I hope.
Board Member Tripp, what the procurement does is establishes a mechanism for the facilities department to secure those services, either on a regular maintenance scenario or the emergency type that you're describing. And because we already have unit prices established, we've already pre-identified successful vendors that have been vetted. It gives them an opportunity to, we'll call it an encumbrance or a blanket PO, where they can put a block of money set aside for these emergency situations, so they can just get on the phone. A PO is already established and they can have the vendor provide those services.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I think Patrick wanted to add something.
Well, Patrick, did you want to add, or did you feel he was given like a, yep, we got it? Okay. So, yeah. Okay. Anything else on this one?
Yeah, I just want to, now we had to go with multiple companies because of the amount of work that needs to be done.
No, sir. The determination for multiples is Rio Rancho is probably one of many clients that these firms provide services to. So we wanted to make sure that we didn't put ourselves in a position for the scenario that Mr. Tripp just mentioned, that we put ourselves that we just with one or two vendors and we can't get on their schedule for the emergency situations. So we feel that based on the capacity of the vendors, it's in our best interest to do the multiple award.
Good enough, thanks.
Thank you.
I just want to add one more thing. I like that vest, that shirt. You look real good in that. And man, when I lose 50 pounds, I'm gonna come after you and see if I can have it. You just look real nice in that outfit, man. I just wanted to tell you that.
The vest actually hides the 50 pounds.
With that being said, I'll make the motion.
You can make the motion.
This is Board Member Jeff Morgan. I'll make a motion for the consider of the approval of ITB number 2 for 2025-007-FAC landscaping maintenance.
Do we need to, you want to add the, do we need to add the?
Want to add the rest of them as well?
Just add the vendors, which are right under.
Oh, you know what? I always forget that.
Yeah.
Jessica reminds me. That is with Bright View, DS Landscaping Management, Monte Sinai Landscaping, right? Did you say that?
Correct.
And Yellowstone Landscaping. Thank you.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we got a motion okay, we got a motion and a second, and all in favor on this?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Board.
Thank you.
I would just add, come on up, Patrick. I just added something, really good question, Board Member Tripp, because we had this big storm. We had trees breaking all over everywhere, and it was a lot of extra work, and it's good that we had several options to go out and be able to start cleaning up. And we do have a lot of work, but in emergency situations, that's when it really does become critical. And so I appreciate that question. It's really timely based on our last snowstorm.
And to touch on even we were talking about background checks, it's nice to have a group of contractors that have already been vetted. They've gone through the background check process. They have a crew that's ready to go at any given time. So that really saves us some time, specifically in those emergency situations, to just get someone out quick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's good. So this is Patrick Martinez. We're considering the approval of the capital outlay projects.
Yes, good evening, President Galbraith, Dr. Cleveland, members of the board. I am here to present our FY26 capital outlay project requests. So this year, very similar to last year, we have requests that consist projects from the following departments: athletics, facilities, food, nutrition, IT, and safety and security. And it's important. We've been very fortunate in the past to receive capital appropriations for very specific projects. And as Dr. Cleveland mentioned early on, this isn't, it's not all the need, but it definitely helps. We have a pretty hefty need in the district. So, all of these projects that we're able to get really help. So the first we have this evening is athletic projects. One of them being the Rio Rancho Middle School bleacher replacement. These bleachers are well past their lifespan, and we're continuing to have to maintenance them, and they're down for periods of time. So it really is time to replace them. And then Cleveland High School gym floor. We were fortunate to get a very small appropriation last year. We requested this, but it definitely wasn't enough to cover the entire floor. This floor has reached its lifespan. We have one more sanding we can do on it before we're no longer able to service it anymore. So we're really working towards trying to replace this one. As far as facility projects, we are looking for Cielo Azul parking lot. Again, this is something that we requested last year as well. Their parking lot is in really bad shape. You can see, the image of the crack, and that really is throughout the parking lot. So the goal would be to do a full replacement of their parking lot so that it's safe. Cleveland High School staff parking, very similar to this, has a lot of issues, a lot of cracking, large holes in it, and we're doing our best to maintain it, but it has become somewhat of an issue. And then one thing we would like to look at is district-wide lighting controls. As our district grows, when it comes to specifically facility use, it's nice to not only manage our lighting, exterior lighting, remotely for energy efficiency energy efficiency, but also for FUAs, if we can actually control lighting a lot better. So if there's certain areas of specifically the high schools that we don't have to have all the lights on, and we can pick and choose based on if there's events happening. And then if for some reason they're not on, it's an easy remote option to turn them on. The next is for food and nutrition, Eagle Ridge Middle School. Again, we had requested this one last year as well. Their floor has seen a lot of issues, a lot of variation in the elevation of the floor. It's actually dropped in quite a few areas, and so it's become an issue. And so we want to make sure we can update that floor. The next set of projects are specific to IT, intercoms at both Eagle Ridge and Rio Rancho Middle School. Again, these are, IT has done a great job of replacing intercoms with the IP intercoms. And so this is just continuing their efforts there. And then district-wide network storage as well as district-wide servers. Again, IT, because, everything is technology-based now, it's a constant need for upgrading. And then Lincoln Middle School, Cafeteria AV, they're one of the middle schools currently that does not have a good AV system. And lastly, safety and security. We are going to be requesting $600,000 for district-wide perimeter fencing, and then $150,000 for security surveillance upgrades. And the image you see there is Lincoln Middle School, and that was the last appropriation we got to do fencing. And safety and security has done a great job. We work closely with them to really kind of hone in our perimeters for the schools and make them look nice. And so we've come up with a good plan of action for our schools. And so this is just to continue the progress to just make our schools safer while keeping them looking very nice. So with that, I stand for questions.
Okay. Dr. Cleveland, did you want to add anything?
I just have a question on one thing. They're showing the crack in the parking lot. Salem, Azul, Sandia Vista, and Cleveland will all open the same year. And they all have cracks that look like that. What causes that kind of separation, that kind of severe separation of the asphalt?
What we found is that some of those schools specifically, the base course that was provided when they were built wasn't sufficient. And so with our sandy, the sand that we get around here, if you don't have sufficient base course, eventually that starts to build and then shift. And so really that's a lot of what's happened with those. So if we were to replace them, we'd have to dig down fairly deep and provide some engineered fill plus, a thick mat of base course and then the asphalt to really prevent it from shifting as much as it has over time.
They're really dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Very easy for people to fall. But as I said, the needs are very great, and this is as far as it goes. But I do think these are really needed projects, and the challenge is, of course, the price of every one of these projects is going up almost daily.
Okay, other questions, Jessica, or no questions? Go ahead, Gary.
One follow-up with Dr. Cleveland and another one. Who signs off when that asphalt is complete? Do we, or is there an inspector that comes in that signs off on it?
Well, there was, so now what we do is we hire geotechnical companies, specifically anytime we do anything with a lot of, obviously like buildings, but anything with site work that they do compaction tests. And on top of that, a lot of the standards have changed over time with what's required for our area in terms of the layers of matting that need to happen for asphalt. And so, it's just gotten better and better over time.
My last question is Cleveland High School gym. It's our newer high school and we're replacing the gym floor. Did we not purchase a quality gym floor to start off with, or because you said it's got one more sand to go?
So interesting enough, what I've learned is that yes, actually the gym was, there's a certain level of, thickness that you can purchase, when you do a gym floor. And unfortunately, I think at the time, what I understand is that we went a little bit thinner when the school was built. And so over time, we have to service these every year, and they do require ever so often a sanding, and they can only handle so much before you're getting to, they'll start cracking is what will happen. And so, yeah, unfortunately, Cleveland was built with a little bit of a not as thick wood, and then just over time, and really the heavy use, these gyms are used quite a bit. And so, maintaining them does require, that level of sanding.
And you can go all over the state and see gyms that have had the same floor for 50 years, but I thank you for that clarification. I think that's probably what we did. We went a little
And just
lighter.
for the record, that gym floor is only 15 years old. So,
Yeah, and that, again, that's my understanding. I've learned a lot with specifically this gym floor, because we've looked at it. What are we able to do? How long can we prolong it? And really, that's from our vendors. That's what's come up, is that there are different levels of. So the goal would be to, when we replace it, is to definitely put something with a longer lifespan on it.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board, Jeff?
it's always money.
Yeah. Yes,
It always
it is
comes
always
down,
money.
and like a lot of projects that toward the end was getting pretty tight as we wrapped up the construction of that school. But to your point, a thicker floor would have probably paid off and might have had it a little longer. So that's always a struggle.
This is Board Member Tyler. I'll make a motion to approve fiscal year 26 capital outlay projects.
Board Member Miller, I second the motion.
All right, we got a motion by Jessica Tyler and a second by Beth Miller, and let's go ahead and do a roll call vote on this, Tracy.
Vice President Morgan?
Yes.
Secretary Tyler?
Yes.
Board Member Tripp?
Yes.
Board Member Miller?
Yes.
President Galbraith?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank
you. Appreciate it. So next is our first reading for changes to policy 209 agendas in order of business. So tonight we will not be voting on this. It'll be in our December meeting.
Good evening again, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Cleveland. I bring to you some proposed changes, a proposed change to policy 209. This is the policy that kind of outlines how the board builds an agenda for a meeting. And one of the things that includes on page 2 is kind of the outline that a board meeting agenda would follow. There's a proposal to change the public comment period from right after the accommodations to right after the reports. And the reason for that change, there's a few reasons for it. One is we often have people wanting to hear the commendations, and then we have reports that people want to talk about in their public comments. This would allow them to comment on something after they've heard the presentation. And then if they wanted to comment on something that was a business item, it would give them a chance to comment before the item is heard and the board has to vote. We just think that would be a better positioning for it. And I stand for any questions.
Yeah, any questions from the board, Gary or Jeff? Over here. Do you want to add anything, Dr.?
I would just add, that also when sometimes we have people coming in, to present the district with an award or a check or whatever, and they're wanting to do that and then go on, they have to sit there and wait through some of those other things. And it just seems discourteous to people who are coming for that kind of purpose. I want to stress it is before the business. So that's, I think, the most important thing, is that comment is heard before the board does take any action. And sometimes reports are exactly, if they had heard the report, it might have answered some of those questions. So I don't think it's much of a time difference, maybe a little bit, but it's still before any action of the board would be taken.
So I think it's good unless anyone else has any changes on that one. So we'll hear back at December 9th, I think, is our next meeting. So that'll be on that one. So, okay. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, as far as advanced planning, we have elementary conferences and Thanksgiving coming up. There's going to be a bus rider count day on the 2nd of December. Our next meeting, December 9th. If you're going to the annual convention at the Embassy Suites, that'll be the 12th through the 14th. And then we have a nice long break from the 23rd to the 3rd. So any questions on anything upcoming as far as on the calendar? Okay, so our meeting tonight's adjourned. Thank you, everyone.